So we're in the wake of Chuck and Tito, and there were so many takeaways from that fight. And in many ways, the big takeaway, but I have to say this, we really didn't know this until hindsight, but the big takeaway is, look, that match simply shouldn't have happened. Chuck left the sport for a reason, and he stayed out for 8 years. Coming back is a hard thing. Ring rust is a hard thing. To try to do that at 48 years old is almost an unheard of hard thing. But I do feel that we now know that in hindsight. I don't think any of us had the same crystal ball and the same vision, no matter how much we all like to attempt to rewrite history and say, oh, I told you so. Well, none of us really knew what we were getting into, and there was a level of excitement for that. But when I bring this up, I don't think anybody better to talk to than Chuck's longtime coach, longtime trainer, and friend for that matter, Coach John Hackleman. Coach, are you with us?
Yeah, you hear me?
Yes, I do. And listen, allow me to jump right in. I'm sure this is a little bit sensitive for you because of your relationship with Chuck, but if I may just ask you some of the tough questions that we all want to know. First off, did you watch?
I watched it. My buddy, I didn't want to watch it. I actually, I didn't want to go, even though I had tickets. Somebody gave me tickets. I didn't want to go. I got invited to go watch it on pay-per-view at my buddy's house, a bunch of people. Didn't want to do it. I was like, I didn't want to see this. But I was talking to one of my students, and I was like, he was watching it, and he just FaceTimed me, and I watched it on my cell phone.
Okay. So what was your takeaway? I mean, it appeared to me as I was watching that Chuck was a little rusty. I think that I hit it on the head when I said, look, he's been out of there, and there was some rust. I've also questioned his sparring before the fight, only because even through social media, I did not see any videos or any footage. I have not talked to anybody in this space. And as you know, we live in a very small community who said, yeah, hey, I've been sparring with Chuck. I just haven't heard those words. Did it appear to you that he was prepared for this match?
I don't know if he's prepared or not. I don't think he has the whatever it is anymore. So I don't know if he could prepare for it or not. So I just don't think he is. I don't know if it's prepared, but I don't think he has the skill sets anymore to be competitive at that level. And that level being someone like Tito, that might, I love Tito and I think he's a great warrior, but he might be a step or two below some of the top 205ers on the planet right now.
Sure.
So I just don't think he's there now. I don't think he's going to be there. I don't think if he sparred every day, he'd be there. Maybe he would look a little better if he sparred a lot. Maybe he wouldn't. I don't know. Maybe the sparring would have been too much for him. But he didn't look like he should be in a cage fighting. He just didn't. And I don't know if it's a preparation or not, or just it's not there anymore at 49 years old, almost 49.
Now, when you look at that fight, though, and as a guy that has trained Chuck from his youth all the way up to world championships, do you have any insight on how he was preparing for this fight in terms of, I mean, was he able to put in 2 workouts a day? Was he doing daily doubles, or was his body just, was it too run down? Was it hard for him to do that?
I wasn't there for this camp at all, but if I was to guess, and I know Chuck, I don't think he was doing the workouts that we used to do when he was coming up, or even when he was at the top. I saw more video of him like recuperating, doing the the after fight. They had the cryo this and this and the chiropractor over here, So I think he was doing a lot more of the recharging, recovering. Then, so he had to do a lot of that because of his age, maybe because, he's had a lot of fights, a lot of wars. But I don't know. I can't call it because I have nothing but respect for the camp that he was in. With saying that, though, I know nothing about the camp, but I respect just the guy, because he seemed like he was a good MMA fighter, and without knowing him, I'd rather respect him than not. If I found something else out, that would lead me the other way, then, I would. But I'm going to say that they did all they could do to train him to get him as ready as they could.
All right, and Coach, the last time that I was able to speak to you was actually on your podcast, but it had come up on there that you were planning to corner Chuck. You said, look, I'm not training him. He's not in San Luis Obispo, but I am planning to go out and corner him. I did notice when I watched this on television that you were not in the corner. So what happened? Why weren't you there?
That's a good question. I was asked, and then I saw it on a video or a couple of interviews. I think I saw 2 interviews where he said I was going to come down and I was going to work in corner. But he seemed to kind of like get into the training, and other people were responding for him a lot. So I think I probably sent like 2 texts out during the camp, like, hey, if you guys need me out here, I got plans, if I'm not going to do it, I want to do this. I was going to go to Hawaii, which I canceled because I didn't know for sure. And, they were kind of, they didn't always get right back to me. And when they did, it was like, finally the last one I got was, well, if you want to do mitts or something, that would be fine. But, we got it covered for the corner, and his camp is going great. And that was his wife. So I didn't want to bug Chuck. I knew he was in the camp. I'm sure there's a lot going on in his head, and he was like isolated. He tried to isolate himself, moving to, I think he spent time in Orange County instead of staying home. And so I talked to him a couple times, but mainly I was communicating with his wife, and she seemed to be like in charge of a lot of the things.
Gotcha. Now, there's always, and everybody's guilty of this in MMA, but it did happen to Chuck. As soon as the fight was over, the questions came in, what's next? Are we going to see you again? And he was not definitive to say no. He was saying that before the fight, he said, look, if I can't beat Tito, I don't belong here and I'll leave. But when the fight was done, he said, you know what? I had some fun. Give me a little bit of time. That is something that we would see from a younger fighter where they go, hey, let's put the brakes on and no decisions right now. But things are a little different when you're 48 years old, when you have a number of knockouts in a row, even if they're separated by years. So I just want to ask you, if we were to find out that Chuck was putting his name back in the hat, if you will, and was going to try to do this again, where would you stand on that?
I would be marching down the street with a vagina hat protesting.
Okay.
I would say, no more fight for Chuck. No more fight for Chuck. And I would, because that's what seems to get the attention now. If you want to march, that's what I heard, that you got to wear those hats. So I would get me one, and I would protest for, I want Chuck doing something else. Chuck has so many things he can do. He has such a good life. He's a family man. If he plays his cards right and he's a little bit frugal, I don't know his bank exactly, but I'd be willing to bet that he is set for life. He's made a lot of money, and if he lived frugally, and when I say frugally, it's like a nice middle class life, he's going to be set. And people always love Chuck, appearances and a spot on a show here and there. I think he would have a great life, go to all his kids' sporting events, and that's what I want for Chuck Liddell. And if there's talk of more fights, I would get a lot more proactive this time.
Gotcha. And I don't know. I can't really make a prediction on that. I don't believe that he'll even be given the opportunity. And that makes me sad to say. I think that maybe that's a little bit callous, but possibly it's also very appropriate. I just don't know. I know that he did offer his services to Dana White. He offered them to Scott Coker, and ultimately ended up on Golden Boy. And I don't think Golden Boy is going to do another show. I think that they're going to collapse on this one. I don't take any pleasure in that. I'm just saying I don't know that we will be confronted with this, and that somebody will have to make a decision or a commission on a licensing issue. I just know for myself as a fighter, if I got that call to fight Chuck Liddell, that would be one where I would say, no, I'm not going to fight Chuck Liddell. And I think that a lot of people would be like me. I think Tito was the appropriate match if we're going to do it. But now that it's been done, I think we turn our head, walk away, and salute an athlete who had a wonderful career. Is that fair by me?
I think that's a great tribute to Chuck Liddell. And one thing I want to bring up, he said he didn't go out on his terms. Did you hear that?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and that's good to say right now, but I mean, I was there then. Okay, and that was his terms. I mean, he had been. I mean, I think Rich Franklin is a great fighter, but he was a one-armed 185 pounder, right?
Sure.
And Chuck at one time he would put his hands down and get hit by someone like Rich Franklin 100 times, and he would be smiling the whole time. So just the fact that he's not there anymore, I think we knew, and you know, me and him did talk about it, that part of his arsenal, which is his chin, just wasn't there anymore. It just wasn't, and you know, there's no shame in that. I mean, it's, you know, so it's just time to move on. So it was, you know, done on his terms, and it was, you know, after getting KO'd 4 times. And so that was his terms. And so, yeah. So now I think it's reiterated now.
Yeah. And such a tough spot, isn't it, Coach? Because, you know, you look at these greats and you look at our heroes from this sport, but really all sports are a little bit guilty of this, and nobody gets to go out on those terms. I mean, a Lennox Lewis here or there, a George St. Pierre. I don't think anybody else, you know, I'm open to suggestions.
Marvelous Marvin Hagler.
Sure.
Marvelous Marvin Hagler.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so rare that anybody gets to go have a great career. Rare. And for the greats, the truly greats, one of the things that made Chuck so great is he was never satisfied. He was never complacent. He always wanted more. That's what makes him great in that moment. But post-moment and post-career, that's also what can keep you up at night and lead to a depression. Not that he's depressed, but you understand my example. And it can make you always regret things. And that's always a really tough spot where at some point, as a coach, you're telling these athletes to be hungry and always want more and take risks and go get these great opportunities. But then it's kind of tough that once that moment's gone to let them know, hey, look back on those memories fondly. Always have those memories, but go move on in life. That always seems to be a bit of a tough one. And we see it more with the greats. And Chuck was one of the greats. But that ability to be unsatisfied can come back psychologically and affect you. And I feel as though, whether I'm right or not, that's some of what he's dealing with. Why didn't you go out on my terms? It's like, listen, Chuck, you got a whole bunch of money, a whole bunch of world championships, a whole bunch of main events. How much more do you really need?
That's like asking a drug addict, well, you've done drugs this long, how much you going to need? They still have the drive. They still have the yearning. They're still jonesing for one more hit. And he loved being in the dressing room. He loved walking out to the cage. He loved being in the cage. He loved the nervousness that so many people, it just breaks them and it makes them, you know, not perform as well. He loved that. He ate that up, and he was so calm and cool, and that's what he lived for. So now to not have that anymore, and that I mean, I would get psyched out. Like, I was like, so psyched out going in the cage when he was fighting because it was deafening. It was deafening. So I could just imagine, you know, multiplying it by like 10,000. That's the high that he must have gotten every time he was hearing the crowd yelling for him. Now, that must be terrible knowing that's not going to happen anymore. So if he wanted one more, you know, I don't think anybody can really blame him for that. But you know, now it's a tough road now. It's a tough pill to swallow that he can't get that. It's like the drug addict isn't going to get a drug anymore. It's like they need it, and it meant so much to him to be a fighter. He didn't just love being a fighter. He loved to fight. I mean, he fucking loved to fight. And you know, that's what drove him for so many years. And I think during these past 8 years, I think he's been just missing the shit out of it, and it's been a huge void in his life. And I hope that this filled something, or maybe, like, I don't know, maybe woke him up, or maybe he'll now go somewhere else for that kind of high that he got so much of in MMA. I hope something else does it for him. Because I hate to see, you know, I just hate to see him sad. You know,
Sure.
I really do.
Sure.
He really is. I know I know I harp on it all the time, and it sounds like I'm just yeah, he was your guy, he was your golden guy, you know, he was your poster boy, whatever. No, Chuck was actually one of the nicest, most generous people that I have ever met. I mean, not even if he wasn't my fighter and I just knew him. I mean, he never once refused an autograph or a picture. I mean, and this is what I tell people, and I've seen it. He'll talk to someone asking him for a quarter on the street that doesn't even know who he is. He treats that person with the exact same respect as he does when that tall bastard Shaq O'Neal comes up to him and says, "You're my favorite fighter." He treats them both the same. That says a lot about a human being. I mean, that's Chuck Liddell.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't know. I love the guy, and I hate to see him sad. I hated this fight. I got sick to my stomach. But he has no chin. He has there's no reason for him to do that again. And I hope he can fill that void that MMA did for him for the good portion of his life.
Yeah. Well, hey, and there it is. I mean, what a legacy, though, he left behind. What incredible memories he left behind. And sometimes I think you just hope that sometimes these guys get so close to the trees they can't see the forest. I don't know if Chuck can stand back and appreciate his contributions. He's the most recognizable fighter in MMA, right? Largely because of the mohawk, but he could go anywhere in MMA and people go, "Oh, that's Chuck Liddell. That's that cage fighter."
Yeah.
And I mean, really great memories. And I guess I would just hope for him that he's able to appreciate that, but I don't know the answer to that. I don't know the answer to that for those guys that are used to competing at that highest of level, and when that ability to do that is gone, if they feel as though part of them has died too. And the answer is no, it hasn't. Those memories and your impact last forever, and I hope he can feel that. I don't know Chuck well enough, but I hope that I'm right.
Well, let's ask this. This is your podcast, but let me ask you.
All right.
Well, you've been to the top of the top. I mean, you've been to the top of the food chain. I mean, not many guys make the UFC. Not many guys make the top of their weight class. So, okay, you've been there. What's it going to feel like when I'm sure you're going to retire in a couple of years? How's that going to hit you? Okay,
so interesting you just called me on that, because I think as I'm telling you my analysis of Chuck and what I hope for Chuck, I think you could replace Chuck, and I think I'm speaking to myself. I think that in many ways, as I say, I hope he built enough memories, and I hope that he can be proud of himself. I think that I suffer or will suffer from what I predict that Chuck is suffering from, which is when you're at that very high level, and you're competing at such a wonderful and unique level that you want to hold on to that for as long as you can, or you would like to make believe that you're going to be the guy that's going to be able to hold on to it forever. When the reality is, from the guys that have come before us and shown us time and time again, that is not how humans work. You have a small window. Dana talks about that a lot. He will come out and say, listen, fighters have a small window. Get as many experiences, walk out there as many times, make whatever money you can, but just know that it's going to close and it's short. And so, yeah, Coach, now that you've asked me about it, I do think a lot of that analysis that I gave of what Chuck is going through is me self-projecting. And I don't look forward to that day. I do enjoy the sport. I enjoy the guys. I enjoy being part of it. I enjoy what comes along with my ego and having conversations like this with people like you and talking about what's next. And I do fear that I will go through it, at least on some level, when the answer is there's nothing next. And that's a reality, but it's a cold one, and it's one that's in front of me. I think that I'm watching Chuck go through it. I think I'm saying all of the right things, but I don't know if I really feel them. And that's as truthful as I can be to that.
That's a good one. And the only thing I could help with, maybe, because I was a fighter as well. I never made it. there was no UFC. So I was a world champion, but it was nothing like you guys do. It was nothing with the crowds and I was nothing like that. But the only thing that's come close to anything like that feeling is training people and passing your knowledge and walking to the cage or the ring with them and feeling you get a lot of the same nerves before a fight and strategies. You get to plan their strategies. It's like, that's the closest thing I think a fighter can come to after his career's over is training other fighters. But it's not the same. And like I said, I haven't been to the kind of level like you and Chuck, so I don't know what I would do. That would be that's a big crash for you, bro. That's pretty anticlimactic. You're going to wake up every day and go, oh, where's the paper? Okay. And you're not going to go in a cage and fight a guy under a microscope in front of thousands of screaming fans on pay-per-view and shit. You're just going to wake up every day, scratch your balls, go out and get a paper, get your coffee, and that's going to be it.
Sure.
Sorry.
No, hey, you're right. There's a big change there. There's a big change there, and I think there's a way to handle it. If you can appreciate it, I sure am glad I worked so hard earlier, so now I can rest a little bit now. Then you've got it made. But if you're not able to reach that mindset, I think you got a pretty tough spot, and that's kind of just the reality and the cold-heartedness of the business. But it comes with its ups too. For some reason, we always focus on the downs or whatever's in front of us, but there was plenty of very high spots that very few people, very, very few, less than 1/10 of the population will ever reach where Chuck Liddell was and be as meaningful as he was. And if that's enough to carry him through, I sure hope it is. I just don't know the answer to it.